Hi, come on in. So, you must be the person I spoke with on the phone, is that correct? Well, I'm so glad you're here tonight. I'm so sorry that our meeting had to be so late, but, you know, the life of a UFOlogist is just very busy. So, come in. And pardon me, I'm so rude. My name is Dr. Moon, and as I said, I'm a UFOlogist. And I understand that you're very interested in learning about UFOs. Is that correct? Oh, no problem at all. No problem at all. I love meeting with individuals and groups that are interested in learning about UFOs and aliens. Yes. Before we get started, can I get you some coffee? Tea? Okay, I have tea. Hold on just a moment. I'll be right back. Here you go. I have it in one of my very own UFO cups. I got this from Roswell, New Mexico. Roswell, New Mexico. That's one of the very first things that made me interested in learning about aliens. Was the Roswell Crash was so famous and still famous. So, how do you like that mug? Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. Here you go. Set it right there for you. Enjoy. It's a little bit hot because I just poured it right out of the tea kettle. So, how may I be of assistance tonight? Okay, certainly. I did pull a few books for you to just reference. I'm just going to tell you about them and show them to you. And almost all of these books can be purchased on Amazon. Yes, Amazon. I like to do that. I like to pull the books that are very accessible to everyone, so whoever's interested could learn. So, one or two of these books I'll tell you cannot get on Amazon, but I'll tell you about them anyway. So, what makes you interested in UFOs and aliens, if I may ask? Oh, okay. Right. No, unfortunately, I have not ever had a sighting. I've definitely tried. I always skywatch almost every night. Skywatching is just when you go outside and you gaze at the moon and the stars and you look for something that's out of the ordinary. So let me tell you how to do that. You just go outside. I mean, you can do this his friend. And they both just ran together and then opposite ways and went into their house. And they never talked about it. They never talked about it. And the funny thing is that they've recently back in touch with each other on Facebook. And they both remember the story. All my husband said was, "Do you remember that night?" And his friend went right into it. And they grew up together. This best friend of my husband's was the best man in our wedding, and they never talked about it until now. So, people react differently. And my husband never thought of it as being a UFO sighting. He thought of it as, he really thought someone was messing with them. He thought it was someone from the base, maybe the Navy base, just, playing tricks on them. Until he started talking to me about it, and everything they experienced was a classic UFO sighting. The bright light, and following them, and coming out of nowhere, no noise. That was very classic UFO sightings. Of course, I said, did you have time missing? And, to see if he had been abducted. And he said, no. Okay, so now his friend remembers it slightly different. His friend says he actually saw the ship. And he says my husband did too, but he doesn't remember. So that's a classic UFO sighting. So, and then we'll talk about abductions a little bit later. So what I want to talk about first, just to give you a general knowledge, because I'm understanding that you don't know a whole lot about it, right? Okay, so when I was little, I was very interested in the Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash. It was so interesting to me. So, as soon as I got old enough, I went to Roswell. It's a beautiful city. It has kind of it's been probably 6-7 years since I've been there, but the very first time I went I was just out of college, or just in college, I don't remember. But anyway, we went, and it was, we got there at night, and we had been down in a different part. We had actually been in Arizona, where it was very hot. So we get there, and the elevation's higher, and it was cold, and it really got cold at night. And we stayed in a small, there's aliens everywhere. So anyway, long story short, we went to the Roswell UFO Museum. And that brings me to my first book. Now, this is the only book, I believe, of the ones I've pulled that you cannot get on Amazon. I bought this at the Roswell UFO Crash the Roswell Museum and UFO Museum. And it's signed by the author. And this is book 2. And I did not have book 1. But this book 2 is supposed to just have actually more information. And I love this book because it has, look at this, original pictures, notes, drawings of what people saw and the different people involved in the crash, and even newspaper articles. So this is very interesting to me. Let me take that out of there. Oh, this is perfect. Look, I got this I put this in there. This is from the UFO Museum in Roswell. This is their pamphlet. You can see this is what it looks like. See that? And here are their hours. Of course, with COVID now, I'm not, you need to check those hours if you do plan on going. So here's the pamphlet. This is a big, it has all kinds of little scenes set up. There's one of the scenes. This is a really cool scene. I took my picture in front of it. So this is the UFO Museum. I this will be on your list, but this covers everything. Very detailed information in here. Really like this one. Okay, this one. This one is the conspiracy journal behind the flying saucers, because after the Roswell crash, flying saucers were being reported everywhere and people were seeing these things. And so this is very information behind the flying saucers. Very, very interesting. So this is another book that I recommend. It kind of looks funny, but it, the outside kind of looks like you're going to be opening up a comic book, but it is not a comic book by any means. Okay, so those are my Roswell books, if you're interested. And you know what? I'm going to place them right over here, okay? Right over here for you to look at after we finish our discussion, okay? So, yes, of course, I don't mind staying while you look. I have so much work. I mean, the life of a UFOologist is very busy. My phone rings off the hook. Oh, let me put these down and I'll tell you about that. Okay, so I put those right over there on the desk for you. You can sit up over there and study those books. Okay, so when I first started working here, I was just very interested, didn't know a whole lot. I had gone to Roswell, I had read the Roswell books, but I didn't know about everything, okay? So, when I first started, I would just answer the telephone of people calling in and reporting sightings, abductions, landings, and I would just gather all the information I could from the caller and get people's names and numbers, and people gave out their numbers more freely than they do now. This is before cell phones, okay, before cell phones. And people also answered their phones, so I think it was a much easier job then. And then I just went into compiling all that information about that sighting or abduction or landing, and I would make a report on it, and I would also have to go and check all the details, because you do get people calling that are not telling the truth, but you do get people calling that are telling the truth, that are very believable. So I did that at first until I just got very knowledgeable, and I really, my mentor, I had a very good mentor. My mentor would tell me what to read and would help me, and I would go to conventions on UFOs, and it's very interesting. You meet such interesting people, I tell you. And then I started the job that I do now. And what I do now is I am sent to any site believe people that say that they've been adopted or captured. I kind of have a hard time saying that word, so I'm going to say captured. Okay, so one of the most famous stories is the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. The true story of the world's first documented alien abduction. Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. This is by Stanton T. Friedman, who is a very, very famous UFO investigator. And then this Catherine Mardine is actually Betty of Betty and Barney Hill. It's her niece. So she heard the story firsthand. And this happened. This couple had gone in the 60s, or the 50s, in the late 50s. They had gone up into Canada to on a little small vacation. It was like a little road trip. And on the way back, they were coming back in the middle of the night, and they were up in the mountains. And they were captured. A saucer, a flying saucer, or a UFO was following them. And Barney actually saw the men inside before it landed. And so it followed them, and it actually passed them, and they thought that they were, it had gone away. They had just made a UFO sighting. And little did they know they were waiting for them up in front. They had blocked the road, and the aliens were out in the road. And it's very interesting because these are two people that were very involved in their community. They were respected in their community. Barney was a postman. I don't remember. It's been so long since I read this book, but it's very good. I can't remember what Betty did, but they were very involved in their community and respected. And they also had a little dash hound with them in their car at the time that this happened. When they got back into the car, their dash hound was scared to death and hiding in their car. So it's very interesting. You need to this is very, when you've studied UFOs, sightings, and then you want to go into being, people being captured by aliens, I would start with this book, okay? I would definitely start with this book. Okay, so there are quite a few books you could read about alien abductions, but I would start with Captured. Just the Betty and Barney Hill. I like this one because of the authors. Okay, this one tells of quite a few abductions. This is called Human Encounters with Aliens Abduction by John E. Mack, MD. And he was actually a winner of a Pulitzer Prize, but not for this book. He is a famous Harvard professor. And for him to start writing these books and getting these books published, it really made waves in Harvard's world, in the higher education field. And he has several books out. I would read all his books. They're a little harder to read because he writes like he's writing a paper to be published. And because he did go to Harvard, so sometimes I catch myself just reading and not understanding, and I have to go back and reread and really think about what I'm reading because of the way he writes, the words he uses. But it's very worth it. Very good book, very well written. He also died in a very mysterious way. He was overseas, and right now I cannot remember what country. I apologize, but it's in the book. Or you can look it up online, John E. Mack, MD. And a car hit him crossing the street, which people felt was very mysterious. just because, he was ruffling feathers and publishing these things. So this is very interesting. And he goes in and he meets with these people, and he tells about their stories, their backgrounds, what happened to them, what happened when they came home, and how they deal with this. So, very interesting. Okay. Now, I know you can see my look up here. This is a gray alien, okay? That's what they're called, the grays. And we think of the gray aliens looking like, like this. Or like this, okay? And they're smaller, okay? There's different kinds of aliens. And I have a book for you that you might be interested in. These are drawings, okay? They're not real pictures. They're drawings of different kinds of aliens that they said people have seen, okay? And it's up to you. You can read this and come up with your own opinion about what you think. But, just to read this book, it's interesting. And you don't have to read everything, the whole book at once, because it actually is just like an almanac. You can just go to the alien, they're in ABC orders that you're interested in, and you can read about it. So, you can take this book as it is and feel the way about it that you do, and I'd be interested if you would like to email me if you do read this book, or get this book in your library. I'd like to see what you think. Okay, while we're on that, about the different aliens people see, some other books over here for you. Let me do a little switcheroo here and move these books over here. There we go. Okay. This book is a little different, but it's very interesting. And this book, it's expensive to get sometimes, but I did. There are 3 of these. I only bought the first one. Okay, they're all 3 wrote by the same man. And this is called Millennial Hospitality. And it's by Charles James Hall, who travels around the country. He goes to UFO conventions, and he tells his story. The story is, I'm going to tell you a long story short, is that he was in the Air Force. And I can't remember if it was back when the Army and the Air Force were still together, or if he was just in the Air Force, but he was stationed up in the mountains. And he reported the weather, okay, so the pilots could fly, and the pilots had to know what the weather was like out in the desert. So this was considered a short-term duty station, because, they lived in the barracks. They couldn't have their families there. There weren't any towns that were really close. They were out in the desert. So you got paid extra money to be on this assignment. And he even drove farther to actually report the weather. He had 2 weather stations that he had to go to, essentially in the middle of the night. He had to be at one weather station like at 3 in the morning to report the weather, and he had to stay out there till about 7:30 to report the weather for the pilots. And then he would come back into the small base and eat lunch. He would eat breakfast, and then he would go back out. And so he meets the tall whites out in the desert, and they apparently lived there. They lived there, and they're very tall, very pale, it's not very well written. A lot of times when you get people that have had sightings and abductions, not everyone believes them. So they publish their own books. And, a lot of them could use an editor. So, this is, if you could just skip some of the parts and read the parts about the tall whites, very interesting. He had a lot of interaction with them out in the desert at night. He met their children. They lived there with their children, he says. He says that things have come missing out of his weather stations, and apparently whatever star system they're from, it takes, I believe it was 3 months there and 3 months back, so he wouldn't get anything. He wouldn't get his belongings back for 6 months, but they were always returned to him. And apparently some people were very scared and couldn't work out there, but he enjoyed it, and he asked to be stationed out there longer than most of the people. So, you read the book and see what you think. It's a little hard to find sometimes, and I only bought the first book. I was not interested in reading the second and third one, but, I might later. I have not met him. So, because I've met a lot of these authors. But I did want to mention that book because it talks about the tall whites. Okay, so you know who Demi Lovato is. Well, she has a series on Peacock called Unidentified, and it's about UFOs and aliens and just supernatural things. Well, she has I watched all of them. It's a docuseries, so there's not very many. I think there's 5, possibly 6. I can't remember. But I think it was episode 4 where she talks about an undersea UFO base. And so it really describes it well. It goes all into, this is off the coast of California. And this book I thought you might be interested in. This is called Undersea UFO Base. It's by Preston Dunnett. And he has a lot of books about UFOs and aliens and what aliens can do. So, just Google his name if you're interested. Okay, so this is an investigation for an undersea UFO base off the Santa Catalina Islands in California. And he actually interviews policemen, the Coast Guard, the military, because, like I said, they like to be by military bases. There's a military base close by. So they call them USOs, meaning they're unidentified and they can submerge into the water. So this is very interesting that they even have, now since they have, Google Earth, they have gone into Google Earth gone into the water. And there's actually pictures of, and you'll see this on the Demi Lovato show, Unidentified. They have, it looks like columns. It's very, very interesting. And do you know that over 85% of our oceans have not been investigated? So as of right now, 85% of our oceans have not been investigated. Now, this book, Undersea UFO Base, was not on the documentary, the Demi Lovato documentary. But if you're interested, this is a very good book to read after watching that. Or you can just read this if you're not interested. But I love Demi Lovato because, I'm from Dallas. And she's from Dallas. Her mom was a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Just a little tidbit there for you. Nothing to do with UFOs. Okay. This next one, same author. This is Preston Dunnett. And this is The Healing Powers of UFOs. 300 true accounts of people healed by ET, extraterrestrials, by aliens. So there's 300 stories in here interesting. And look how thick that book is. Very interesting. So this is another book for you. I personally have really enjoyed this book because, I mean, we're thinking that these aliens are doing good things. Good things. Okay, last book. The last book I'm going to leave you with is The Mothman Prophecies. The Mothman Prophecies. Okay, so this, you gotta really open your mind for this. This is a New York Times bestseller by John A. Keel, and it's a true story. And there's been a movie made about it, okay? But the movie doesn't go at all into this book. This is a book about a certain time period in a certain place in the East, where it was being reported that people were seeing very strange Mothman, and just very strange things in general. And it's very interesting. They think that it's like a gate was open and these strange things were coming through. They saw tall Mothmans. They saw moth women. They could stretch their wings out and they were extremely long. They would fly with cars. They would race cars. They scared people to death, but they never really hurt anyone. So, I mean, this is very interesting, the whole book, because it covers all kinds of different reportings, abductions, many sightings in different places, all in this general area, which covered several towns. But very interesting, and it's easy. It's an easy read. I definitely read this and then watch the movie, because this is nothing like the movie. So I've kind of given you just a little dab of different parts of the alien story to study, okay? Just little different parts, abductions, undersea bays, oh goodness, the Roswell, okay? So this is just to get you interested